All right. Uh, Hello and welcome everybody to the July 1st Octant community meeting. Today we're going to go through just a few quick things on the agenda, and I'm also going to show some experimental stuff that I've been working on around plugins. After we talked last week, I spent the weekend messing around with stuff. So first, let me share my screen and we will get into the agenda. Okay, you should see the agenda, I think. Good. Okay, good. So we added Dependabot. So that's something that folks will be seeing. It is, yeah, it's there. It's doing its thing. If you're subscribed to notifications for the repo, I apologize. You're probably getting bombarded by lots and lots of things, but it'll start to slow down as Dependabot catches up. It does it in batches of 10, and so as it starts to work through those, will be less spammy about all the notifications. I don't know if there's really anything else to add to that. We haven't enabled it for the front end yet. We plan to be doing that. I think the goal there is to do a manual rev of all of our current front end dependencies, then turn on Dependabot so that they're kind of all already at the latest, and probably move it into like a weekly cadence. So yes, that is all. That's all happening now, so that's good. The next thing is, or did anyone? I know Scott and Sam did the work to set up the Dependabot stuff, so they might have something to add. No, okay. So the next thing on the agenda is this is workaround that Sam has been doing, which is the upload of a kubeconfig. And one of the questions that was posed is, should Octant save the kubeconfig somewhere after it's uploaded? And if so, what should that look like? So Sam, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of this work revolves around considerations of in cluster, because if we were simply talking about an application, then it would just save somewhere local, and we put it in like .cube and things would be okay. And so I think the challenge here really is, what is the user expectation going to be? Because I would also make an assumption that if they're deploying in cluster, I'd have an expectation that the kubeconfig would already be set up. Like they wouldn't be uploading a kubeconfig in real time into an instance of Octant that's deployed in cluster. And moreover, we probably want to set it up in a way so then once a kubeconfig has been established, we can't upload another one to overwrite it. And so I think it's probably a little too early to jump into things like naming conventions and what it should save like. So maybe we should probably start discussing on what this would look like for the case of an application. In other words, if Octant was running as an Electron app, and if you didn't have a kubeconfig the first time you started up Octant, and so you finally got your kubeconfig, and let's say you pasted that into that Octant upload window, do we all generally agree that Octant should actually save that kubeconfig, so then the next time you open it, it would automatically start up with that kubeconfig?
Yes, I would expect that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and as for like, I think it's okay to get into conventions a little bit. I think Octant could just write a kubeconfig to the standard folder and tag it with -Octant in the similar way that other like plugins do and other tools do when they create their kubeconfigs. They just prefix them or append them with who made it. Octant could do that. The other thing is what was it? That's all. I forgot the other thing I was going to say. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are so if we establish that for an Electron app, we do need to save it somewhere, I can write up a doc that will address a few cases, like what if Octant already generated a kubeconfig, and then all of a sudden say, Octant can't find the kubeconfig again, what happens? And then, yeah, so I think there are some general, yeah, so yes, I'll probably have to write a doc about it. And if there are edge cases, we'll figure out what that needs to be. And then since we're technically not in cluster yet, I'm just gonna punt on that for now.
Yeah, that's gonna, yeah, the in-cluster work's gonna require some re-architecting of most of the user establishment patterns that we have. Like right now, we still have all of the global session, global kubeconfig, everything's passed around in one big dash config object. All of that's going to have to get extracted out. We're going to have to create interfaces around that. We're going to have to, I mean, I imagine that what'll likely happen is that we will have two like paths inbound into Octant, one for when you're running it locally and one for when it's running in cluster. And those things will just be different.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I have a question about, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying the whole paths remind me about like how I think like Lens, apparently at one point they had they have a version that runs in cluster, but they were two different projects. They called it something else. They were two different code bases.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is something that we even want to entertain.
I mean, that's one of the conversations that Brian and I have been having is Octant in cluster still Octant, right? What is like, cause the idea behind Octant is this very fast local dev tool that can use informers and fill a bunch of memory with all of this information so that you can move around and access your cluster data really quickly. And when you move that to being deployed in cluster, you are bound by a whole new set of constraints and a whole new set of problems. And so maybe there's ideas that we pull out of Octant and borrow and we import and we maybe move some things into Octant package that this new thing that runs in cluster, leverages, but that's not that far off. Like we're not considering the idea of it being two separate things, but we want to be very careful if we go down that route.
Yeah, I had a question just to follow up on the kubeconfig thing. We do have the command line argument for that, right? And how that works, and if you specify the kubeconfig through that.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that still works the way it used to, and that will never save or do any changes, right?
That does not save.
Okay.
Yeah, that just points to a path.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering that I mean, that kind of relates to this, and should that maybe change as well?
I don't think so. That's a pretty standard. The reason that's there is because it's the standard practice for most CLI tools and tools that interact with Kubernetes. They respect the kubeconfig environment variable as well as being able to pass in -- kubeconfig. So I think we would still treat that in the same way we do now.
Sounds good.
Cool. Figure out that.
All right. So this is actually, this ties into two things. So the component and documentation site, which is now live, it's a Storybook instance. We've shown it in the past. It's got all of the components in there, and it is updated. So Sam did a bunch of the initial groundwork for this, and then Milan and Sam did a lot of the porting over to Storybook, and then Milan did all of the finalization and adding code examples and generally just adding all of the docs and stuff like that for this. So it's a lot of work by Sam and Milan to get this in place, but it is a very useful tool for not only for developing Octant views, but just for plugin authors as well. We've been talking about it for the last, it's blue. Is that normal? Anyway. So this is when you show the code here, this is the actual Go code that you would use. It's missing, anyway. This is the Go code that you would use. There's
Yeah. The
if
color scheme is weird.
the color scheme is weird, so it looks like there's things missing and stuff. But so the nice thing about this is if you were writing, doing things in Go, you could come in here and you could copy this block out and paste that in and see the result of that. And then on the canvas itself, which we've shown before, there's a little syntax error. That's fine. Let's skip that one. You can go over to the knobs and make changes, and they should render in real time on the screen. Like there, you see A became C, and I could add I think I could just add another point in here if I could type correctly. Does that work? Something like that. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know how to use graph. It's fine. These are all of the same components that we support in Octant. We even are able to get some of the things like the editor component loading up. So we encourage everyone to look at this and take advantage of it. Report bugs that you find, report usability issues that you find. The goal here is to kind of make Storybook the comprehensive documentation source for Octant, both for all of our components and all of the eventually all of the plugin development documentation and everything will happen right through Storybook. So thank you, Sam and Milan, for all your hard work on that. It's really awesome. All right, and then did anyone have any other questions or anything they wanted to? I was going to do a quick demo of this TypeScript plugin stuff that I've been working on so that people can see it a little early and can solicit feedback there. All right. So the last community meeting, we had talked about plugins and we discussed some of the problems. We had the author for the Helm plugin came and joined us, and then we also offline we were able to have a conversation with the author for the Aqua Security plugin, and we were able to reach out and talk to the Tecton CI/CD plugin author. And what we found was that between all of them, there was a host of different issues. Some of them didn't find them to be problems. Some of them did find them to be problems. So we're looking at solutions that kind of solve all of those problems, but still enable people to write plugins easily and quickly. And one of the things we are currently experimenting with is a TypeScript loader for plugins. And I just want to show that real quick because it's something that I think will get people's brains going about potential. So if we, I pull up Octant, let's see, let me do, so I have a little VS Code window here, and what I want to do with it is I want to, can you all see that window okay? Yeah, okay. So what I want to do is I'm just going to remove some of this stuff that I had added so I can show kind of the hot reloading and things like that. But so what we've done is we've made a little loader for Octant plugins that uses TypeScript, and what it can do is it can take a plain old TypeScript file that uses I didn't realize I didn't have Octant running. It uses a transpiler to take the TypeScript file, convert it to JavaScript, and then it takes that and passes it into an ES5 compliant runtime and runs the file as you have defined it inside Go, but it's able to connect to and call all of the same internal services and client calls and things like that plugins do now. The benefit here is that it takes away the current problem that some folks have brought up to us about needing to recompile a binary for every single platform. It also fixes the problem of plugins Octant needing to be stopped and the plugin needing to be stopped, and then a new binary put in place, and then Octant restarted to get plugin changes to present themselves. So the development pattern for doing that is not very nice. You have it's a lot of Control-C, it's a lot of killing out of things, and then even if you have set up some type of file system watcher to stop and reload things for you, if your plugin throws an error because it's an actual spawned process and it's not cleaned up properly, it can be out there running, holding on to memory, holding on to ports. And I've seen this happen myself when doing local plugin development. So I wanted to kind of figure out a way to solve some of those issues, as well as reduce the amount of friction between writing a plugin and seeing that result up in Octant. And so the line, the code that I'm showing here is sitting in my Octant plugins folder. It's a plugin right now that is currently generating this config entry under the configuration section of this pod here. And if I start to change this text and I save it, that will result in this text here being updated. The nice thing about this is you can also, so it's not just limited to the predefined components. So if we extend our capability and we say we want to be able to support the status of this plugin, right? We can save that. Now we see that status is available to us, and we could go back to our pod, and there's no status entry because we haven't added that section to the handler yet. But we can create a new section, add in status, make it status, same text, whatever, save it. And now what we have is this showing up in the plugin status. Currently, there's no component implementations. So what I've been doing is I've actually been using our storybook page to go in and grab out the JSON examples and then paste them in where you would expect to actually have a component library available to you. But currently this will work for all of the printer configurations, as well as adding tabs. It doesn't do modules yet, and it doesn't have the ability to, well, the reason it doesn't do modules yet is because it doesn't do Flexbox, but all of that is currently getting added to this experimental branch that I've just been hacking on the weekends, and we'll probably release it as under a feature flag or as part of just alongside existing plugins. We're not going to change or remove existing plugins anytime soon. We're just getting people prepared and trying to get ideas out and in place. So I just wanted to show this. I had shown the team earlier in the week a different example. This one's a little more refined. The convention here for the TypeScript would be to export default a class. The class implements this Octant plugin interface. And by implementing that interface, the TypeScript library will type check for you. So if you're not in compliance, you know already that your JavaScript probably won't run correctly. And then the other benefit is that when we're transpiling this from TypeScript to ES5, we use that same Octant TypeScript file to check it in the Octant side of things, so that we can actually report back to you the line where the error happened. So if there was some error here on like this line 18, right, we would actually be able to say bad line 18 of your plugin is bad. And then one other thing, that the reason I have these lines down here is because traditionally logging in plugins was awful, and getting it to work right was a matter of making sure you had the correct incantation of some crazy logging thing. So what I wanted to show was that we, if you can see this, here is the console, and those console log entries that I just popped down into the bottom of the plugin. Those are, you can see them here, the info one, the warning one, and the error one. Those are directly tied to the these calls right here. So now you have access to do proper log, warn, and error in your plugins. So, which right now is you can do it, but it doesn't necessarily always go to the right place. So anyway, that's it. That's all I got.
That's pure magic. I love it.
It's definitely it is bespoke.
Yeah, I mean, it opens so many possibilities.
Yeah, it's neat. I think this version that I have here is obviously an experimental version. It does open a lot of possibilities. It needs to be fleshed out a little further just to make sure that it can do some things. One of the caveats on this is that like if you wanted to use something like RxJS, or you wanted to use something like grab the Kubernetes JS client library and use that, you would have to use something like Rollup or Webpack to combine all of those files into a single JS file before Octant could run it. And the reason is because, well, the reason is because we don't want to have to deal with your JavaScript node modules, npm set,
Right.
like you give us ES5 JavaScript, or you give us a TypeScript file that implements our interface, and we'll run it. But we don't want to be in the business of packaging up some crazy Git repo full of JavaScript. So, which I think is reasonable. I think it's reasonable to say that if you want to use extra packages, you have to Webpack or Rollup. And I already have some rough documentation about like what Webpack settings and what Rollup settings you need to make sure that your thing goes through Babel, gets transpiled to ES5, and then like uses all the right polyfills so that it works in our runtime. So it's not difficult. I've already played with it a little bit myself. So. All right. Well, any questions, comments, any other things that people want to add to the agenda? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Oh, I will say this for folks who I know we do get some people who watch it later. This week, most of the Octant team is gone later in the week. So if you're on Slack looking for us and need help with stuff, it might be spotty coverage, but just a heads up. So, well, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.